Hello, welcome everybody to a Inside the Birds playoff roundtable. Geoff, Mosher, Adam Caplan, and Andrew DiCecco as the Inside the Birds playoff roundtables continue for another week because the Eagles are back in the NFC Championship game for the second time in 3 years. They are at home again at the Link Sunday, 3 o'clock against a very familiar opponent, the Washington Commanders, one of the only teams to beat the Eagles this year. They beat them the second time around. A lot to get into with this game. Welcome, Adam. Welcome, Andrew. A lot to talk about. Look, there's a lot of subplots for this game. It's an NFC East NFC Championship. Haven't had that one since the 80s. So that's pretty interesting. Two teams that are familiar with each other. A rookie quarterback playing out of his mind for the Commanders. And, of course, injuries impacting both teams. So, Adam, I start with you. When you look at this game, and we always like to start with a big takeaway. The Eagles are going to play the Commanders for the chance to go to the Super Bowl. What is your big takeaway, your big outlook going into this game?
The injuries are a factor. There's absolutely no question about it, particularly for the Eagles. With the Hurts left knee injury, the A.J. Brown left knee injury. We'll learn more about that from people around the league that we talked to who graded the Eagles tape, including Greg Cosell. We'll talk to Greg about it. But we know Andrew was there, so we'll get his opinion of what he saw. But that's a concern. There's no question about it. The weather won't be nearly as bad. In fact, right now, unless it changes, it's going to be around 40 degrees at kickoff at 3 p.m. Eastern, which is good. But the big takeaway is we got to watch how JalenHurts looks, see what he does this week, doesn't do, and how they're going to have the quarterback run game with Hurts on Sunday, which has been a major part of their offense, particularly lately.
Andrew, I go to you. I think all three of us have no issue, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, saying that the better team, the better 53 belongs to the Eagles, and in some case you might say a lot better. How does that factor into this game, and do you think it'll be closer than the discrepancy of the 53 might suggest?
It could because injuries, like Adam said, that could play a factor, especially if Jaylen doesn't have the mobility that he normally does. But I'll have more on that Wednesday when I'm there for practice and get a better sense of the severity of it, what are his limitations, and what direction is the team headed in. So no need to really sound the panic alarm just yet. But Jaylen's ability to be that +1 helps the running game, and it helps the whole offense establish some sort of a rhythm. So for him to not have that mobility would be an issue. But the Commanders are coming in very confident. They're a team that you could say that they're playing with house money, as we talked about. But they're going to pull out all the stops against Philadelphia Eagles, so they're going to have to be on high alert.
You know, it's funny, and I think it's sort of the nature of the beast. I've seen some people, Eagles fans, really say, why does everybody say the Commanders are the team that's coming in hot, but not the Eagles, when the Eagles have won as many more games? And obviously, since the Washington loss, they haven't lost. And, you know, they even won a season finale where they started their backups against the Giants. The Eagles do come in hot from a win-loss standpoint, but I do think you have to look at the Commanders as a very dangerous team. They knocked off the number 1 seed on the road in Detroit, and they did it, I don't want to say fairly easily, but by double digits. They won the game by 14 points. So that part of it is shocking, and that part shows that it's dangerous. My outlook going into this game is very simple. Even though the Washington-Philadelphia game, Adam, I always joke, never follows the script. That's usually once per year, not all 3 times. And even the first game wasn't all that crazy. Turnovers are going to be the key to the game. The Commanders turned the ball over 5 times and still won in the second matchup, right? Kenny Pickett had to play. JalenHurts left. It's very rare you're going to see that in a playoff game, and I don't think that will happen again. If some team turns the ball over 5 times between the Eagles and Commanders, that team, in my estimation, is going to lose the game. We know right now, after last weekend, that the winning teams didn't combine for 0 turnovers. The losing teams in the divisional round combined for 8. Turnovers kill in playoff games. Whoever turns the ball over the least, in my mind, will wind up winning this game. And as we've seen, guys, the Eagles are a very ball-secure team. The Rams were not, and that, to me, Adam, was the difference in the game.
Yeah, and by the way, to your point, we'll just take it to another level here. The Lions lost the turnover battle 5-0 last week. And when you do that, Goff didn't play well. He had a number of turnovers. The 3 picks were all costly. But when you lose a turnover battle like that, you're going to lose a game like 95% of the time. course, Goff won that crazy game where he also had 5 turnovers against the Texans. But again, that's extremely rare in the National Football League. No, Jalen has been, he in the run games helps because he doesn't throw the ball a lot, but he's made much better decisions than last year when it's just like, wow, what is going on? And why is he turning the ball over so much? So lately, the second half of the season, he's not. And look, that counts. That's part of being a good quarterback, is not putting your team in a bad position.
Absolutely. And by the way, it's really ironic, right, that Washington and Detroit met. I mean, Washington and Detroit might have been the only 2 teams this year that won games despite turning the ball over 5 times. The Lions did it early in the year. Washington did it against the Eagles. Then they played each other. And of course, Washington didn't turn the ball over and won. And that speaks a lot to how they played in that game. And of course, a rookie quarterback who has just played lights out. Let's recap the Rams for a few minutes before we get into previewing a little bit this and getting into the injuries. So this Rams game, Andrew, was really interesting. The more consistent team offensively and defensively were the Rams, but the more explosive team offensively, and if you consider turnover creation and explosive play, were the Eagles. And that's why they won the game. So there may be some things to be concerned as far as what we saw in some run defense and pass defense at times and what we saw in pass offense. But the Eagles have kind of lived this way all year long. Be explosive in the run game, get 1 or 2 big ones from Barkley, and play great defense. And that was the script.
Yeah, I mean, look, defensively, it's important for a lot of folks to remember that the weather did play a factor. I was there. The snow was really coming down the fourth quarter. For defensive backs in particular, it's very difficult to find your footing. I saw players slipping, and naturally you're going to play off coverage under those circumstances because you don't want to give up anything over your head. Not that the Rams have explosive playmakers, but they want to secure the tackle. So, yeah, they gave up some more plays than they're accustomed to doing, but they're playing winning football. I will also say that it's a big ask to ask the defense to continuously find ways to propel you to victory when the offense doesn't get started or whether they get started late in games. It's just not I don't think it's a sustainable recipe for success the further you get into the postseason.
Agree. And listen, I think it's really interesting to see, Adam, how that game turns out if there were no elements. I mean, I think there were some advantages there that you could attribute to the Rams having if there were no elements, especially on that final drive. But there might have been advantages also for the Eagles in their offense and defense without elements that played into it. But that's part of the game. It happened. Were you concerned by anything you saw in that Rams game that were elements free?
Non-injury wise, I would say defensively, the run defense, basically, because I, as you know, I let you know that I talked to someone who graded the Eagles tape from who's worked for an opponent that they've played over the last 6 weeks. He just wanted to see what it looked like, and he helped me out, and he said that there were some alignment errors at linebacker. Now, he didn't break down 10 minutes for me. He just said, hey, you should know that there were some times, and he said, is Bond wearing the green? He said 53. Is he wearing the green dot? I said, I believe so. He goes, it looks like a guy who is playing this position for the first time, at least having this responsibility. So that was a factor. So to answer your question, now I know Washington moving to that team, they don't run it all that well. They ran it better against Detroit. But that's just something to keep an eye on in this game, see if Washington could have some success. That was interesting. I looking at Washington's run game, they did way better than I expected them to do. It wasn't a great game running it, but it was better than they normally are. But so what any concerns going forward other than there's some great
tackling.
things? Yeah, tackling. Yeah. I would say tackling, but it's alignment, Andrew, to take another level. This is what the tape showed. There were some alignment issues. I think, Geoff, you had sent me a clip just to take a look at, which I'm going to look at, which may back up what I was told. So that'd be something to look at. But, overall, look, this defense is really, really good. And you mentioned the elements. There's guys slipping on both sides of the football. It was equally as bad. But you got to be encouraged overall with Jaylen Carter, who right now is one of the top defensive players in the National Football League. You've got – that's the thing about this roster. You got the best running back in the NFL. You got a top 3 receiver when healthy in A.J. Brown. You feel good about a lot of things. But you have some concerns that will be corrected. This is what practice is for. This is why the coaches are grading the tape Sunday night into Monday and getting the players ready for when they come in the building so they know what they got to clean up.
And to that point, Andrew, you've written a lot this year about Nakobe Dean. While Zach Bond has had the All-Pro year, Nakobe Dean has really he's been the glue to the front six, and you've written a lot of stories about toughness, attitude, but not just that, but also cerebrally, right? You've written about how he is the guy who wears the green dot, tells people where to be, knows where to be himself. And as Adam mentioned, after Adam told me he'd got some intel that said you might want to, there might be some alignment issues with Bond now wearing the green dot. I did find some plays where, first of all, you could see that there were times the Rams quick snapped to not let the Eagles get themselves set, which was really smart on Sean McVay and Stafford to do. They converted a 3rd and short that way. They got 8 yards on a 2nd down on a quick to Cooper Kupp on the left side that way. And then there was a play where Higbee was wide open over the middle for 8 yards in the first half, because what looked to me, if you watch it, and this is the clip I sent to Adam, Bond and Burks are tapping each other, trying to communicate, but they're both switching spots, and then they both rush the same gap, and then one has to retreat. So that stuff can be cleaned up in practice, but I think to what you've written about, Andrew, all year, when you don't have a leader like Nakobe out there, even with some practices, it just doesn't make up for having, the real guy, the thing that kind of like what we talked about when you had Vic Fangio types, but then now you have really Vic Fangio. You can see the difference when you don't have Nakobe in there.
Yeah, there's another play where Tyler Higbee was wide open. He just dropped the ball. So to your point, I mean, to your Nakobe Dean point, the Eagles, by and large, have really handled tight ends particularly well. There were times in this game where Tyler Higbee, the middle of the field, was pretty open. And I think a lot of that has to do with, Adam talked about the alignment issues. I would just attribute it to inexperience wearing the green dot for Zach Bond, for sure. When you have somebody that you're used to hearing his voice, he's worn it for now. This is his 2nd season doing it. They're accustomed to hearing Nakobe Dean and his details and him conveying the calls. And I think that when you don't have that, it takes a little bit of getting used to. And it's ideally not great doing that in the postseason, but they're trying to navigate it right now. But I would imagine that they'll get that rectified. Vic Fangio mentioned last week that he doesn't usually pair 2 reserve linebackers next to each other in practice. That's a rule of his, because that's not how it happens in a game. So the more that Burks and Bond get the reps together in practice and they wear the green dot, I would imagine that gets ironed out.
I would add one thing. This is the kind of thing, Andrew, if this happened to be training camp and they had 3 to 4 weeks to take care of this, I don't think it would be a big deal at all. Probably something we would not be talking about. But because of the shortness of time now, if they win this week, they'll have the bye. That would help. Not that you practice during the bye, but to be able to clean this up in such a small period of time, you just don't. And by the way, you don't practice a lot.
Right.
I know, talking to coaches over the years, when you're in it this late, you don't want your guys to wear down. So this is it's something to watch, because Austin Eckler, as we turn the page, what did we learn further since Sunday? Austin Eckler looked damn good Saturday night. He's clearly healthy.
So to your point, Adam, Vic Fangio today, he was asked about Burks and Trotter and the differing skill sets that they may have and how it maybe correlates to this week in trying to defend someone like an Austin Eckler. And Vic said, not really in this particular case, because both players are they have similar skill sets. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but I know that neither are super adept in coverage. But I think you'd be more willing, if you're Vic, to lean on a veteran in those circumstances rather than have a rookie throw him in there and have him really be forged by fire. I don't know if that's the spot for that.
Yeah, and certainly, it doesn't get sort of easier from a offensive mastermind or play caller standpoint going up against Cliff Kingsbury and what he and Brian Johnson have been able to do with that offense this year for Washington, making the most out of guys like Eckler and Zach Ertz and Diami Brown, who's really coming on. They're attacking the middle of the field really well. And by the way, they did that well against the Eagles in the loss in the first time around when Eckler had 8 catches for 89 yards. So now it's on tape. Easy enough that it was spotted pretty quickly. Adam got the intel. We looked at it. We saw it. So certainly Cliff Kingsbury seeing the same thing. And you can imagine that'll be worked into the game plan coming up on Sunday to try to attack those areas of deficiency in the middle right now of the Eagles defense without Nakobe Dean there. I want to flip sides. I want to give JalenHurts some credit. We constantly talk, whether it's us 3 or Greg Cosell, about some of the things he does well from a cerebral standpoint to put the offense in position to succeed. And we'll get into this on Inside the Tape later in the week as well. But that Saquon Barkley touchdown at the end of the first quarter. I think it was 62 yards. Something really key happened there that I want to give Hurts credit for. Saquon Barkley lined up on the right side of Jalen Hurts, which usually means he gets the ball and he goes off to the left, right? On that play, he noticed that the Rams were aligning their heavier personnel, their big linemen, on the left side, and then Michael Hoyt was off the field, and they had a nickel down on the bot or a light linebacker down on the right side. So what Hurts did was go to the line of scrimmage. You see him kind of doing the hand motion, and then Barkley switches over to the left side before the snap, so that when he takes the carry, he goes off right tackle and gets Mekhi Becton on Christian Roseboom, I think it was.
Yeah,
he basically got the big blockers on the little guys, which was not the original design of the run. I imagine that that's what the communication was. I'm speculating here, but it seems pretty obvious that he flipped the run of the play at the line of scrimmage and got the bigger body on the smaller body. So I want to give Jalen Hurts some credit there, because decisions like those in tight games, guys, are going to be the difference. And this is how the Eagles have lived all year, getting those explosive runs to either get the first touchdown or get a big lead against the team that they're playing. So, Adam, that's going to have to be the recipe in my mind against Washington. I think Barkley had 150 yards both times against Washington. They can be a little leaky in run defense, but these are the kind of plays that you're going to need to see from the rushing offense to compensate for what's really not there in a pass offense right now.
Well, we don't know yet in terms of what the pass game will look like, because we don't know what Hurts can and can't do. We just don't know. This is a new situation.
Well, I would say even if he's healthy, the pass game hasn't been that great. This is what their formula has
say that, but let's not forget there were two passes that came back. Smith he dropped it, but he got hit illegally. That was the pass deep middle. That was the post route for way down.
A great throw. Witherspoon hit him. Yeah.
I feel like
and then also the one that Brown dropped down the right sideline.
I feel like the throw should have been, well, it's not his fault. He's not, he threw to his arm strength, but if he releases a little earlier or has a little more zip on the ball, it's probably caught.
The ball was there, but AJ dropped it.
I agree with you.
I know it's there, but he let the corner had to come from the other side of the field to get to that hit on. And if you can zip it in there.
Oh, wait, are you talking about
the Devontae play?
The Devontae Smith play where he got hit by a killer. It wasn't a safety who hit him. It was a corner coming from the other side of the field. So my point is,
I see. It should have been out earlier.
Throw it a little earlier, or if you get more zip on it, then. But again, I'm not asking him to be.
But he had. But understand, he had it in his hands though. Like he got hit. He also got hit. To your point, maybe if it came out earlier. But my point is the pass was accurate. That's what I'm looking for in a quarterback.
It was.
Get the ball there as on time as you can. If it's protected well. And again, they didn't, because the run game, because somehow through all these short runs from Barkley, then he had the crazy monster runs. No team owns the Rams better than Saquon Barkley. That is I got to mention that. That's one of the most amazing things I've seen in my career.
460 yards rushing over those two games against 460 yards rushing.
That's insanity. And think about it, largely on 4 runs.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Saquon Barkley versus the Rams be like the MVP candidate for the Saquon Barkley versus the Rams beats out Lamar and Josh for MVP.
He would probably rush for 3,000 if he faced the Rams every week.
Against Eric Dickerson's old team, nonetheless.
Yeah.
But Andrew, what about you and your thoughts on the passing game? Obviously, the Hurts knee injury throws a real curveball, and we'll find out more as the week goes on. But I still think that this is going to have to be a Saquon game where they're going to need some explosives from him.
Well, it's going to have to be, but you also have to remember how the Commanders played the Eagles last time. Saquon really struggled to get anything going after Hurts left the game. So you have to wonder if an impaired Hurts, we're just assuming, we'll have to wait and see how that would impact the running game. And then all of a sudden it puts a spotlight on the passing game, which all season long you haven't really had to tap into that. But now all of a sudden that could be a very prominent storyline. They're going to have to – they need more from it regardless. Whether you go against the Bills or Patrick Mahomes, the passing game has to look a little bit better than 130 yards. You have to be able to – you can't just lean on it sporadically. It has to be more of a rhythm. You have to get more players involved. A.J. Brown's your best player. He dropped the pass down the sideline that he has to have and help Jalen Hurts. Adam pointed that out. But I just think that the passing game has to get into more of an earlier rhythm. And I think Kellen Moore needs to work with Jalen Hurts. Also, get him some easy completions, like you saw Cliff Kingsbury do for Jaden Daniels in that game. The short passes to Austin Eckler, to Terry McLaurin. So I think it's going to have to be a concerted effort, and they're going to have to make more of an emphasis on the passing game this week, in my opinion.
And let me add something right off what Andrew said. And we talked a little bit about this on Sunday, but we will move it forward. So to me, Andrew, with AJ's knee, and they'll learn more about if there's any improvement with that left knee, but Dallas Goedert looks so damn good. To me, I make him the focal point of the passing game.
Yeah.
I look, and Devontae too, of course, needs to get the ball. But when you got AJ Brown at half to three-quarter speed, he's clearly not himself. You got a guy who's clearly over his knee injury. 88 Goddard looks great. I mean, you control that passing game with a tight end in the middle of the field. He absolutely can do it. I know the Commanders have a good secondary, but pretty good at linebacker. We know about Louisville and Bobby Wagner, but who cares? You know what Goddard can do. He's really hard to cover. A super physical, which is what you love.
I think you're spot on with that, Adam. They do need to get Dallas Goedert going. They have a player in their secondary who I love throughout the pre-draft process, and he's been a brilliant find for them. Mike Sainristil, the nickel corner from Michigan, highly intelligent player. He came up huge for them against Detroit just last week, and that's a player that I can kind of picture him squatting on some routes and trying to get some good jumps on some Hurts passes, on the intermediary passes.
I tell you what, even in that loss that Washington had, I thought Sanders still played pretty well.
He's a good player.
He gives AJ Brown a lot more of work than Emmanuel Forbes ever did. I know.
Now I'll tell you this. I remember AJ was talking. I think it was before the second game, and he said, "Number 0." He goes, "He's a good player." He didn't know his last name, but he said number 0. He singled him out. Yeah. So there's a respect there that he has. He's very cognizant of the his level of play throughout the season. So I'm interested to see how that plays out.
I want to ask Greg, Geoff, when we talked to him this week, how much, because Sainristil had been starting on the outside, because Iguahagany now is playing a lot, played a ton of snaps. Wow. With Lattimore back.
Nickel, right? He's their basic starting nickel, I believe, right? Iguahagany?
Yeah, but see, I want to see how they align them if he knows the alignment, how much Sainristil is playing inside or outside.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're nickel inside, nickel outside. Every team does it differently. Yeah. I just wonder how they're doing it, because I could tell you from talking to Washington, they drafted Sainristil to be their nickel. Actually, to play mostly inside. Yep. But Sainristil came to Michigan as a receiver. He runs better than you think he does.
He is so instinctive. He is so instinctive and reactive. He reads quarterback's eyes.
Good player.
Yeah. It would be interesting to see making Goddard the focal point would be first of all, before we even move on.
They never do it, but I don't know why
they never do it, right? I actually thought, and I know AJ Brown said this after the game, that he's feeling better, he's getting better. I thought watching the tape that I saw more. Now he didn't catch. He had 2 drops that were bad, but from an explosion and getting out of his breaks standpoint, I actually did think he looked a little sharper getting down the field in this game than he did the week before against the Packers. So maybe with another week here, and I'm gonna guess they're gonna treat him with kid gloves this week and not throw him out there a whole lot, that you can get him even fresher. And then maybe there's a downfield element more so in this game, because I agree with both of you guys that it's going to be harder and harder. The ultimate goal here is to win the Super Bowl, and without any semblance of a downfield game, even just the 1 or 2 shots that they took against the Rams, teams are coming at the Rams came after Jalen Hurts. When teams come after you, you're going to have one-on-ones opportunities. And I thought that there were more chances for Jalen to pull the trigger when I watched the All-22 where he didn't. But here, if you got AJ Brown a week later and a week healthier, Adam, against the Commanders, and you got a shot, I think they do have to try to pull the trigger. It's been, I think, 7 weeks now since we have seen Jalen Hurts connect on a pass of 35 or 40 longer air yards. I mean, obviously he had the one to Devontae that was a penalty, but and it was dropped. But it's been quite a while since we've seen one of those downfield shots to Brown get connected.
Well, it's funny because what they did against Washington in that last match of Week 16, to AJ, they hit a 45-yard completion, which is good. And Barkley, for all that Washington thought they did well that game, Barkley still went for 29 for 150 and 2 touchdowns, including the 68-yarder. So, but yeah, the thing that you're learning about Barkley is that, and this has kind of been the story of the first half of almost all of the games, not all of them, but almost all of them. You're going to get bottled up for 2-3-1, 2-3-1, 5-7. Then something happens in the second half. I don't know what. I've never seen anything like this before. maybe the best second half of game runner in NFL history, man. I don't know what Jim Brown did, but this is what he's doing right now is simply amazing. But on Jeff's point, moving this forward, if A.J. Brown is at 80%, you got to get him the ball downfield. But I'm just telling you, Goddard could be a game changer. If they ever featured him, there's obviously A.J.'s not going to be 100%. That's clear. Maybe he gets to 80%.
Yeah, I think they're going to look to involve A.J. early because Marshawn Lattimore, let's not forget, he had 3 pass interference penalties.
Right, that's right.
Yep. So I would even imagine Jaylen chucking it up there, knowing how physical Lattimore plays. He's very handsy to try and draw, a flag.
Oh, by the way, real quick, Geoff, before we move on, and this plays to what we're all talking about. You're going to learn early on in this game where Jalen's left knee is, because if he's on a 7-step drop, you got to drop, you got to plant, you got to throw. And I'm interested also because they had a number of runs for him last week. So this is from Next Gen Stats on that touchdown run, the 44-yarder, which was pretty amazing. He reached the top speed of 19.29 miles per hour in the 44-yard run. His 10th play over 19 miles per hour as a ball carrier this season. Third most among quarterbacks behind only Jaden Daniels, 22 miles an hour, and Kyler Murray. So that's he actually he's had Daniels is, and we're going to get more into him later this week when we preview stuff. But this one on Hurts, by the way, he gained a 38 yards of over expectation, which had a TD probability of 0.2, which tells you Jalen Hurts was phenomenal in that play.
Yeah, great next gen stat right there. Let's be real though. Let's call it like it is for the playoffs so far. The play calling and the overall quarterback play has been conservative. Intentionally, I would say conservative.
Yeah.
At any moment, like we saw in the regular season against the Steelers and even some other games, that can completely change. Right? Obviously, Jalen Hurts' health and ability to throw and plant the plant leg will be a factor in it. But let's say for the most part, he's going to play and they have to pass the ball. I would imagine that unless they just do that thing again where they snap out, I don't want to say snap out of it, where they determine that they're going to go into this game with a more aggressive mentality than they've been putting on tape, I'm expecting more of a conservative approach to the game. Do you guys differ in that?
I don't think they're going to change anything different unless the Commanders dictate it. They're going to continue to lean on the running game, play conservative. They're going to trust their defense, and they're going to try and keep the ball out of harm's way on offense. That's going to be their primary objective when they do take to the air. That's my opinion. Outside of a couple of games this season, they really haven't deviated from that.
So Geoff, I'd say this. I loved the first series, right? They went with 11 personnel. Johnny Wilson started technically, and they came out and threw the ball right away. They got Goddard involved right away. They got Smitty involved right away. Then they mixed the run, throw, I really love the mixture. And as we know, it started to become a little bit harder to throw as the game would go along, particularly in the second half. But I'd like to see that. I like the way that Kellen Moore mixed it up by getting the pass targets the ball. Brown didn't get the ball on that first series, but boy, they moved it well. Then Hurts scored on that later on that drive. So I like to see that. I like the diversity of play calling there. I like to see him shake it up a little bit.
Yeah, they did. They came out through the first 2 plays, and then they went obviously to the ground and then got the quick touchdown from Hurts. And then on the second drive, it seemed like they went right back to the ground. Didn't work. Third drive, they did try that shot to Devontae. They're sort of Jekyll and Hyde with when they want to be aggressive and when they want to just go ground and pound with you.
I like the opening drive. I liked his opening drive.
Me too. And that's when they did come out and throw on the first 2 plays. Again, Adam and I have talked about this, Andrew, you too, with this. I would love to see them come out, spread, empty backfield, push the tempo right from the start like they did against Pittsburgh. But for whatever reason, that was game specific against the Steelers. They haven't seen that. We haven't seen that since. And they are coaching and playing the game right now to get as much as they can out of their ground game and as much as sort of like squeeze the orange with the short pass game, maybe take an occasional shot, but do not make a big mistake. And that has been the formula for winning. Now, one of these days, they're either going to catch a team that also doesn't make a mistake,
right,
or they're not, and they're going to win the Super Bowl. So I guess that's for the conversation we'll be having in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, that approach works till it doesn't. And
Right.
so, but right now, I would say they're living on the edge because you're asking a lot of your offensive line, your running back, and your defense to really be the engine that drives this thing. And Jaylen, to his credit, he's done a nice job of keeping the ball to harm's way. And he's also made some timely throws late in games, like the AJ, like one to AJ and Devontae. But you got to get off to a better start with the passing game, and I think that has to start this week.
All right, Adam, as Andrew just said, they are putting a lot of pressure on their defense, a defense that has now lost Nakobe Dean, and we'll see about how effective and impactful Quinyon Mitchell can be based on his injury that kept him out of most of the game against the Rams. And let's factor in the third part of this. Now you're facing a quarterback who just brings a totally different dimension with his ability to run, throw on the run, and make really good decisions. So putting a lot of stress on your defense as you get round by round by round becomes a little bit more problematic. However, the injury that the Commanders suffered against the Lions, losing their best lineman, right guard Sam Cosmi, to an ACL injury, is obviously going to impact this game. It's got to impact this game.
Oh, it has to, because think about it. I don't know how they're doing this with this group that they have. I mean, Andrew Wiley, who's a very average right tackle. Left tackle Brandon Coleman may or may not be playing at the right position. I know some teams we talked to thought he'd be a guard or right tackle. And you got to give the O-line coach, Bobby Johnson and Cliff Kingsbury, the OC, credit. They're working with what they've got, doing a great job. And Daniels is really processes well, gets rid of it, really takes a bad sack. It's been a good story. I'm interested to see, based on what they saw from the last game, whatever, we don't know how they feel. That we'll see on Sunday what their attack is. We'll learn very quickly, by the way, what they think of the Eagles defense, secondary, linebackers, O-line. Obviously, you look at the first two games, particularly the last one. When let's call it like it is. It's really the only bad game. I'm throwing the Tampa Bay game out because of the heat and all the Eagles were dealing with. That performance from the defense in Week 16 was not very good. I mean, let's call it like it was. That's got to be on their mind when the dude he just crushed them, absolutely crushed them.
Yeah, and it was a game changer, obviously, when C.J. Gardner-Johnson gets ejected, and they lost their back end communicator, and that's when you saw a lot of the miscues.
Yep. Yeah, the Eagles it would be great if the Eagles could just get through this next game without any in-game injuries, because depth at certain spots like safety, corner, linebacker would really come into play if they were to suffer any more injuries there on the back end. We're about to find out how special Jayden Daniels really is, because if you look at the Chiefs by comparison, they have no left tackle. They have literally moved their left guard, Joe Thuney, who's an all-pro left guard, to left tackle, where he's not an all-pro. He's just literally trying to do what he can, but they can overcome that and win games because they have a special quarterback in Patrick Mahomes, and everything about that franchise and the coaching staff is special. So without their right guard now, Sam Cosmi, we're going to find out if Jayden Daniels can withstand the loss of one of his best linemen and having a rookie at left tackle who's done an adequate job.
Best lineman, by the way, by far his best lineman.
Right now, their best lineman?
Well, no, I'm saying losing their best lineman.
Cosby, yeah, their best lineman. Right.
Not one of them. He's their best lineman by far.
100%. And then having a rookie left tackle, we're about to find out if Jayden Daniels himself can overcome that. No rookie, Andrew DiCecco, no rookie quarterback has ever won a conference championship game and went to the Super Bowl, starting quarterback. There's been Joe Flacco, didn't do it. There's been Mark Sanchez, been Sean King. We all remember that, lost 11-9 when he was the Bucs quarterback to the Rams. There has been Brock Purdy, and there has been Mark Sanchez. You know what the common theme among all those five quarterbacks, though, is? They weren't asked to win. Like, Sean King was on a great defense with the Buccaneers run game.
Yeah.
Right? Mark Sanchez was on the ground and pound Jets. Flacco, defense and running game with the Ravens. And Purdy may have been the most of it, asked to do the most out of all those guys. He gets hurt on the opening play against the Eagles. Hassan Reddick puts him out. So this is different with Jayden Daniels, right? He is literally being asked not to be hidden or be a complimentary piece. He is asked to be the piece.
Well, he's answered the bell. He answered the bell against the top-seeded Detroit Lions, and he looked remarkable. So he's not going to come into the lane shell-shocked or anything like that. The lights aren't going to be too bright for him. But it comes down to Vic Fangio versus a rookie quarterback for the third time. To kind of boil it down in the most simplistic form, I think that is going to be the chess match I'm most fascinated to watch. And if he picked up any of his tells or tendencies, and if he's able to neutralize them, because it's going to be really tough. I do believe they're going to target that second level. and really the whole intermediary level of that Eagles defense.
And one thing, the last game, not only Andrew's correct about CJ Gardner-Johnson being thrown out, that killed them, obviously the back end, but they had a lot of penalties in that game. Now, remember, JalenHurts got hurt early, so it could have been the cadence. We'd have to go through the what each penalty was, but there have been some games where you go, man, what are they doing? Not lately. They've been pretty disciplined, not a lot of bad plays or penalties, but just something to keep an eye on, how disciplined they are. But the Eagles, to move it back to them, they're really well coached. They really are. And I'm sure both teams, you look at this, it's been a while. Geoff has a really good memory for this stuff. When was the last time a Redskins / Commanders game, forget a championship game, obviously they haven't met in the championship, but I'm just talking about a game late in the season meant something like this, something really good, big. I can't remember.
Well, I can remember a game in 2009 where the Eagles won like 7 or 8 in a row, and then they were trying to finish it off and win the division. They lost to the Commanders in week 16, so it was the week before the season finale in Washington. But the Commanders weren't very good. It was just one of those doesn't follow the script games. The Eagles lost, and then forced them to, I think, have to beat the Cowboys or play the Cowboys again at the end of the year. This was not 2009. It might have been 2010. Either way, it was one of those things where you didn't think the Eagles were going to lose the game, and they did. And the Commanders weren't very good, but they figured out a way to win the game anyway. So you're hoping that that's not the case here, because this is a good Commanders team, and they are capable of pulling off an upset here, as they've already shown. And no, I can't remember a game of this magnitude between these two franchises since I started covering the team in 2005. So you're talking about almost 20 years here where it's actually meant something.
Let me ask Andrew a question, because he and I grew up here.
Yeah.
And you're, as a kid and then growing up now, you've covered the team. You've had very interesting perspective. So we just talked about Washington, Philly. There was never really, to me, growing up here, much of a rivalry. It was always Dallas and Philly. For you, as a kid growing up here, do you remember what games gave you the most interest? Any rivalries?
Eagles Giants. Though there's one game that really sticks out in my mind. It was New Year's Eve, 2001. Both teams were fighting for the NFC East. It was I think it was Kerry Collins through to Tiki Barber, who lateraled it to Ron Dixon, who goes up the left sideline, and there's only like 10 seconds left. He gets down to about the 4-yard line, and he's tackled by safety Damon Moore, who gets him by his ankle, and the Eagles win the NFC East.
Damon Moore from Iowa. Oh, wow.
No, Ohio State.
Oh, okay. Who's okay. Same conference.
Those early, Ike Hilliard, Amani Toomer, Giants Eagles games always really resonated with me.
Okay.
All right, guys. Wow. I did the research and I hit this one on the head to your question, Adam. All right. Okay. 2008. We all remember 2008 because the Eagles benched McNabb at halftime of the Ravens game. Kevin Cobb comes in, right? They lose the game 36-7. And then the following week, they play the Cardinals on a Thursday, Thanksgiving, and McNabb is reinstated, and they pound the Cardinals 48-20, which starts a 3-game win streak. They beat a good Giants team at the Meadowlands 20-14, and then they pound the Cleveland Browns at home 30-10. So at that point, they win 3 straight games by a score of 98-44 combined. So they are rolling, right? 2008, they're getting their groove back. Then they go to play Washington. All right. And they lose 10-3 to a Washington team that at the time was 7-7. All right. Jason Campbell was the starting quarterback. Their best receiver is, Chris Cooley, Santana Moss. It's the guy who led them. His last name was Betts. I don't even remember his.
Liddell Betts.
Sure.
Liddell Betts, yeah.
Right.
Number 46. Yeah.
Right. So and that forced an important game. That loss cost the Eagles so much that all those things had to happen the following week in the season finale. The Bears winning, the Raiders winning, for then the Eagles to go beat the Cowboys 44-6. So that's what I'm saying. That Washington team was about as average as it gets, and they beat the Eagles 10-3 that week.
Random aside, do you remember who got the interception in the Raiders game?
Oh, come on.
He knows. Go ahead.
Todd Baker from New Jersey.
Yeah.
Absolutely. By the way, he was in camp with the Eagles the next year. That was
right. There you go.
Look, Andrew, we've actually
very good.
It's really interesting. We've done this. This will be our 8th season coming up. We've brought up some random players. Most people won't know, but we like the randomness because sometimes they make huge plays. Yeah. Rashad Baker, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good call.
So as we talk about this Eagles defense, though, I think that at the end of this Commanders Eagles game, when we're doing Inside the Birds post game live, right? And then maybe the post, of course, the ever popular now post game show with Andrew. We're
Did they
going to be
like
talking about.
We got a
Did they
big
like
number
it?
on that.
Oh,
Yeah,
man,
it was
people
great.
loved it. Yeah, great
Love it.
feedback. Great job on that. Because you gave a part of the locker room and the environment, and you set the scene in a way that Adam and I can't do when we, 5 seconds after the end of the game, we're talking, dissecting the game. So that was a really great addition. But we're going to either be talking about two guys, I think. And if it's the Commanders, we're going to be talking about how amazing Jaden Daniels was. And if it's the Eagles, we're going to be talking about that Jaylen Carter once again disrupted a game. I believe we've reached the point where Carter, Adam, is the most disruptive player on the field. And by the way, Commanders got a lot of good ones on their front six. I don't want to shortchange him, but Jaylen Carter right now, he's playing like a dude that's possessed, like playing every snap, and he's causing a whole lot of headaches. He saved that game, as Andrew mentioned, against the Rams.
You're talking about a guy right now as a top 3 defensive player in the National Football League. He's not just the best defensive tackle, arguably, certainly one of the best. But if you just look at the way that he's played, the word that we got it from people we talked to who've gone against the Eagles is like he would freelance a lot last year. This is when a lot of the D linemen were. One guy said to me this week, it's kind of funny line. He goes, even when he's wrong, he's right, which means even if he doesn't do what he's supposed to do, he still makes the play.
Right.
Like he's that gifted, and he is an amazing football player. And also give Clint Hurt credit. Clint Hurt's really the key. Yep. I know when people are worried about the run defense early on, oh, this Clint Hurt, you guys made a big deal about it. I don't think we can talk about Clint Hurt enough. Jordan Davis is another story for another time, but man, Jaylen Carter, Moro Jones has been a nice story. Andrew, Booker, who made the team, it's been a nice story for them. So Clint Hurts deserves a lot of credit here.
I mean, Jaylen Carter, think about this, guys. On his 68th and 69th snaps of the game, he got the sack, and then he forced Stafford to really throw a hasty pass up to end the game. I mean, that's remarkable. For a player that in the offseason and really through training camp, the primary topic of conversation was conditioning and how he was going to fare. And he said, I'm ready for it. I'm ready for the responsibility. You could say it, but then he went out there and he's still doing it. 19 games into the season.
Yeah, I've watched that play several times and on the All-22, and I'm completely convinced that if Stafford has his footing down, if he's not rushed by Jaylen Carter there, he completes that pass. He was on a roll. I think it was to Nakua, right? Nakua makes the out cut, like the pass is there. That's Stafford. That's vintage Stafford, just throwing the out route off versus the coverage like that. But Jaylen Carter, as to your point,
season. He saved their season. They're still playing right now because of Jaylen Carter.
Yeah, you could see like instead of Stafford stepping into the throw, he kind of had to like mini. You're like when you're slipping on ice or you got to like plant quicker.
Yeah,
and he was all arm on it. He was not lower body. And as great as the arm is, you're going to sail, right? Or you're either going to sail it or you're going to underthrow it. And it just couldn't get there because of Jaylen Carter barreling down on him. The kid's special. And Adam, to your point, one thing that I think Jaylen Carter does, and I used to think it was just freakish athleticism, but now I think there's also like some mental part of it. On a lot of zone runs, what you're not supposed to do is try to cross the offensive lineman because that gets you out of the gap and it leaves a gap open for the cutback lane. You never want to do those against like Shanahan style offenses that live off that cutback. But he's crossed over the lineman, but then reversed back. It's almost like he's anticipating like I'm going to cut across. They're going to cut back, but I'm going to just be like pounce like a cat. Like, I don't know how you do that at 310 pounds or whatever he is, but he is a freak of nature, and he's starting to combine the physical with the mental, and that's a problem. Because you can game plans against guys, but when guys are doing stuff that you're not supposed to do and doing it well, that's an issue.
And also 93 Milton Williams. I just want to mention Milton Williams before we get out of here, Andrew. Milton Williams and Eagle fans know how good he is, but they don't, unless you're talking to people or watching tape every week, you don't quite know. But when you hear it from other teams, they go 93 is a problem. Wow. Hands are great. Power. Relentless. This is the story of this defense, Andrew. As I sent it back to you, their energy and their execution. Going to training camp, I don't know how you felt, but I was like, okay, there's upside to this defense, but I have no idea what to expect. Though we knew the coach would be better. I don't want to say I'm blown away by how good this front has been, but I'm surprised. I didn't think it would be this good.
But I was going to say, do you remember when Jaylen Carter last year when Baker Mayfield goes to spike the football. He almost times it so that he comes up with it. But it's just stuff you can't teach. It's just, it's innate. But what I would say, Adam, is I thought that going into the season, and I was on the more optimistic side of the defense, I thought that if they finished anywhere from 15 to 17, that would be realistic and deemed a success. They finished the top defense in the NFL. A lot of it has to do with coaching, but players taking leaps that they were counting on. Nolan Smith, Nakobe Dean, Jaylen Carter. I mean, it's Darius Slay really he has the he's defying Father Time a little bit there. They've gotten really strong performances across the board. So I think and they're a lot more athletic. They move a lot better. Last year, the defense to me was very slow and there wasn't a ton of communication, and all that has been eliminated. And you're seeing a fast flowing defense with all three levels working together.
Well, we know this fast flowing defense has got at least one, and hopefully for the Eagles, two more exhibitions where they flow fast and get the job done. I love this roundtable, guys. It's been really fun. We're going to continue to do this throughout the playoffs. We have really examined this matchup, this huge NFC matchup between the Eagles and Commanders as best as we can. A lot more to come on Inside the Birds this week. We've already had Gunn on One out. It was a great interview with Derek Gunn and Jeremiah Trotter Sr., who had some really interesting stories and observations on the Eagles. We will have Q&A at some point later this week. That'll come out. Our Patreon folks are going to get treated to Greg Cosell. Get treated. That's what we do every week with Greg Cosell. Adam, are we also having another special guest on Patreon?
Yep. Unless something happens that we're not expecting, John T. Flippo will be back with us Wednesday evening at 8 p.m.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was like, we got to get him. I'm only going to ask one question. The Patreon members could ask any questions they want, but I want them to go back. I got to find the dates. What was Sunday night, the celebration? Like when did they start buckling down and actually watching tape? Sunday night? I don't know.
Right.
And then what was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? Because it was a regular week.
Mm-hmm.
Just the craziness of that week, coaching his first championship game. And it's probably, I would think, pretty special. I'm very curious what he could remember from that week.
Well, you got to see that at patreon.com/InsideTheBirds. Become a member and get rewarded with all the great interviews and bonus content that we do. Of course, Andrew DiCecco will have his InsideTheBirds.com writings. He'll have the DiCecco Daily coming out this week. He'll have Rookie Diary with Will Shipley that everybody loves. And in his Inside the Locker Room podcast, Inside the Tape with Greg Cosell later this week. And, of course, leading up to Inside the Birds pregame show with Greg Cosell, along with our other Inside the Birds podcast. Plenty of content and coverage this week on the Inside the Birds platform. For Andrew DiCecco and Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher. Thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one.